No matter who you are, everyone has a point where you hit a roadblock, a stumbling block, a place where it's like your path has been halted, altered. You cannot go with the same trajectory, the same momentum that you had before. And the question becomes, what do you do? How do you act? How do you react? How do you get to the other side of the problem? Sometimes when we have those moments, we look to videos, we look to books, we take courses, sometimes we hire experts. But whatever it is, one thing I promise you is that you'll always need to go through a process because you don't want to just get to the other side, but you want to get to the other side better than you were before you reached that roadblock. That's what we're going to be talking about on this episode. I am bringing to you a friend of mine, someone who I have found to be a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. She helps so many other people, and I don't even know if she realizes how natural her abilities are. That yes, she has learned, and yes, she has trained, and yes, she has honed her skills. But what it truly is that she brings to the table seems to be so much deeper than that, something that comes from her very core. And I think you'll find that same thing is true as you hear today's conversation. So, without further ado, Kristi Thompson, welcome to Hope Rising.
Thank you, Maurice. I appreciate it. I am excited to be here. And I don't know where this journey is going to take us, but I'm excited to go in any direction you want to go to talk about leadership and hope and overcoming roadblocks, because that's what I absolutely love to talk about, how to help people overcome their biggest challenges. So thank
Hallelujah.
you.
Hallelujah. You're welcome. So today, the biggest challenge so far is that like for the last 45 minutes, we've been trying real hard to get this podcast interview off the ground, and it's just like everything is trying to come up against it. So we're going to hope we actually make it through. So you said that for you, you are just incredibly passionate about helping people get to the other side of their problems and their issues. I guess I would just start by asking you like why does that matter to you? Why how you formed an entire business around it, like an entire like your entire business model is walking into businesses specifically in the education world, but you've done it to help me, so I know you can do it with anyone. You walk in, you help people identify their problems, and you help them find solutions. Like, why do you do that? Why are you so passionate about that?
Yeah, I think the the answer that I'm going to give you is it's in my root. My grandmother taught in a one room schoolhouse, and I was raised by a family of educators. Everybody in their household, all of the siblings, they were educators. They all had their degree in education. And my grandmother worked so hard to make that so. And I'm super passionate because of where I come from and my background. My father was an elementary school principal, and I was a school rat growing up. I went with him every time I could. Every time we had a snow day, or even in the summer, I would go with him and I would help him. And I love just helping people, and that's what my family has done for their life, and it became my passion too. And the schools that I worked for, always helping people, and whether I was a teacher, whether I was a principal, curriculum director, superintendent, and even whenever I moved into the corporate space as a director of training, it's been my passion, and it's what I love to do. And I grew up doing it, and growing up learning that that was what you were supposed to do, and how we serve people is important, and knowing that you leave that impact, a legacy of impact, has been really important to me, to make sure that I not only grow myself, but I help people grow and get where they want to go.
Mm. You said three words there that I almost want to just stay on those words. You said a legacy of impact. That is an incredible thought because there's already an established legacy of impact in that you have a lineage of educators, a lineage of helpers. But I think that it's also so important for us as individuals. You know, we're paving our own path. Like you're doing things that are very different than what daddy did. You're doing things that are very different than what grandma did. Like you're in different places and spaces. When you think about that legacy of impact, what can you describe what that even means to you? Because I think that is what a lot of people are looking for in their lives when they get to those midlife crises, when they get to those places where they're just like, I'm losing my mind, is they're worried that they're not going to leave behind a legacy
Mhm.
of impact.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question. Uh, I think for me, as I've moved through my career, whenever I felt like I wasn't fulfilling that capacity to help as much as I knew I could, that prompted me to always say, it's time for the next thing.
Mm.
And I think it's really about keeping myself sharp and making myself grow, just as I expect people that I work with to be open to doing. And I think knowing that I have helped people and knowing that I have really help them overcome something, to me is the most impact that I could ever make.
Mm.
And knowing that I'm doing some good. I'm leaving people, I'm leaving organizations, I'm leaving schools better than I found them. Whether whenever I was in the school world, it was passing a bond issue as a superintendent. That was really important because our kids needed a school and that needed to happen. And two people before me didn't get it passed. And when I
Mm.
left, that's the legacy that I left. The building got built because we passed the levy. And it wasn't because of me, it wasn't because of anything I was doing, it was because of the community and the people that I had helping me doing that work. And I think that's what it is building that community and connecting with people, and that helps other people. How are you serving and how are you helping other people serve? So when I say impact, I think that's truly what means the most to me. How am I leaving that impact? Am I leaving it better than I found it? Because that's my goal.
Yeah. There was something you said in your answer that to me is, I guess that for me as a coach, is often one of the first things that you need to assess and address when you work with people, is that when a person has found that they're not, or a company or organization is finding that they're not hitting their stride, hitting their goals, reaching the mark, when you said you have to be open to change and open
Mhm.
to grow, there are many people who are open to succeed but not open to grow. And those are two different things.
Yes.
You're open
Yes.
to, yeah, I want to succeed. I want to win. I want to hit my numbers, my measurements, my metrics. But are you willing to heal? Are you willing to work on your thought process? Are you willing to fix your processes and your procedures? Are you willing to change and adapt just for change's sake? Or are you willing to change and adapt so that you can grow up, or your company can grow up, or you can get to another level that is sustainable? I don't think that it's sustainable just to try different techniques. It's not going to sustain anything if there's brokenness behind the techniques. I hope I'm making some sense when I say that. When you hear me say
Yeah.
that, where does that
Yeah. And
take
I
you?
think where it takes me is you have to be ready for that. And when I talk about change with organizations and leaders, there's a growth zone, right? I don't want people so stressed out that they're paralyzed by that. And it's really getting them into that growth zone where they're uncomfortable, because the things that make us change are the things that make us uncomfortable. And until we're uncomfortable, we're not going to have the urgency to change. And so it's getting people in that zone where they're uncomfortable with what's happening and they see a sense of urgency behind overcoming those barriers and really hearing what those barriers are. So if I'm working with a group on the culture of their organization, we're going to find some things about communication, and we're going to find some things about open-mindedness and self-awareness. Are we self-aware enough to be to know that we are a part of this problem? Do we have an open mind? How are we reacting? Are we reacting in out of emotion? Are we reacting out of fear, or are we in critical thinking? And I really take the time to find out where people are coming from and see where, if you're not in critical thinking, you're not going to grow. And I think that's the important point. And you're not going to leave a legacy of impact, and you're not going to overcome those challenges. You can want it. You can also want a quick fix and never get it. So I think when I look at working with organizations, that's that's the biggest thing. Groups who have that open mind are willing to change. They're going to overcome the problems that they're having within their organization, but they have to put in the hard work. It's not a quick fix. It's not a quick win. It's not just a one and done. You're not going to fix a problem in your organization by hiring one person to come in one time and talk about positivity and spreading kindness. It's doing the deep intentional work. It's I equate it to sometimes like therapy, because we have to go back and get the root cause. If we don't go back and get the root cause, then we're not getting to the real issue. And like you said, there's trauma behind all of that. People have said things that they didn't even know that they said that was an issue, or sometimes they know it and they're unwilling to admit that they were wrong, or that they jumped too quickly to say something. They were reacting out of fear, or they were blaming somebody else when they needed to really look inward. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think for me, when you say that, like it's really it's mind changing. It's changing your mindset
Mm-hmm.
and getting people to see that there's an urgency behind changing their mindset, or there can't
Yeah.
be any growth.
To me, it made a total difference because I've often said, so I really, how do I explain this? I've been training, teaching, doing these things for the majority of my life, really. And during my 20s, I was a corporate trainer for a while, and I was a training manager, and I worked in a call center. And I started to have success. I would train 30 people per month. So I would take them through a month long course, and then the next group would come in, and the next group would come in, the next group come in. And after about 2 years, when you looked around this place that I worked at, and there was four trainers, and I was sitting in a room with people, and they said, Maurice, like, what do you feel like you've like added to this place? Like, you've worked here for a couple of years, you've been training, and I said, what do I think I've added? And they said, yeah. And I said, have you ever noticed that the majority of the people who are your supervisors are people who came from my classes? And the person was just like, oh, that's a coincidence. And I was like, are you sure? Have you ever looked at the statistics of how people perform when they come out of my classes? And he was like, no, why? And I said, oh, I look at them all the time, and I compare them to the other people. And he said, okay, so you're saying like you're God's gift to training? And I said, no, I just force people to get uncomfortable in my classes. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, from day one, I do not care about you being comfortable. I care about you being successful. So the measuring stick is not me making you comfortable ever. And then eventually I became a coach, and I became a drug counselor. And inside of the facility where I did a lot of my drug counseling. Now, a lot of people in their brain, they're like, well, they're there for rehab, so like, of course everybody wants to change and get better. No, they don't. Somebody was like, if you don't go to rehab, you can't live here anymore. And they're like, I don't even need rehab. And they're sitting in the room like this is a waste of time, right? And so when they walk into my room, I at such a point where I had done it enough, like I had a reputation, and the reputation was, Maurice ain't gonna let you pass. Maurice is not gonna let you say I don't know. My words are, I don't know is the starting point to a process. So after you say I don't know, you'll then have to assess what you do know, and then you'll have to begin to talk through what it is that you know that you don't know. So for me, whether I am sitting with a room full of teachers, with a room full of businessmen, or having a one-on-one session with an entrepreneur, my baseline is I do not care about you being comfortable, but I do care about you being safe and successful. Safety means there's no judgment that you're imperfect. There's no judgment that you have quirks. There's no judgment that some of the reasons you're stuck is because you want to be stuck, because you don't want to see what's on the other side of something new. There's no judgment for any of it. You are completely safe to be honest, completely safe to be open, completely safe to show up as the real you. But I'm not about to make you comfortable. I'm just going to make sure you're super safe so we can have success. And I think that because that is always the metric or the measure I walk in with, that people adjust very quickly to that. Like they respond to it. Like I just start saying, "Hey, if we trying to be safe, it ain't coming." So, or excuse me, if we're trying to be
Mhm.
comfortable, because I believe that success comes on the other side of your comfort zone.
Always, always. The things that come easy and we haven't worked for, we don't appreciate them
Mm-hmm.
as much. And if our employees or the people that we lead don't see us working hard, what's going to make them want to work hard? Or
That
don't
part.
see us being open or vulnerable? What's going to make them be vulnerable? Being kind is really about being clear and giving
That's
feedback.
good.
If you're not willing to take the risk to give someone some hard feedback that they may not want to hear, then you're not really helping them. It's
Mm.
like if you didn't like my outfit today and you said, gosh, that color just doesn't look good on the screen, like I can change that. So
Uh-huh.
I would appreciate that feedback. Like, hey, that's too loud for what we're going for. Can you go change real quick before we hop on? I can change that. And people think that there are things about themselves that they can't change. You can change, but it takes discipline and it takes effort. And you're not going to go where you want to be unless you put in that effort. So clarity on the things we can change is really important. On the things we can't change, then we need to figure out support systems for people. Like, how am I going to hire? I'm not really good at being organized. How am I going to hire people that are super organized so that all I have to do is play to my strengths? And whether it's organizing training, professional development, or strategic planning may not be a gift for somebody, but you need someone who's organized on your team, then you better be looking to hire someone who has that skill that you're lacking.
Yeah, that's so good.
And
How
I
how
think
you just.
that's really like it's getting to know the people that you're coaching
Mm.
and getting to know what their strengths and their opportunities for growth are so that you can push past those barriers.
Mm. That's so good. Now that's interesting that you say that, and I understand what you mean when you say it. I think because you and I have two different superpowers, I do see that part differently, but I 100% understand what you mean. Um, because my superpower tends to be I'm really good in short spurts. So like I'm the spark plug guy. I'm the person who's like the catalyst for the storm to change. And there may look, you just talked about it, right? You said you have to have a level of clarity, and part of the clarity is about who you are. So if you know who you are, you can surround yourself with the other people to do what you're not. And so I have always felt like I used the analogy before of being in the calls, or excuse me, being in the chemical dependency world, right? I always said my job is to make things easier for the therapist because I'm not a therapist and I don't think and process like a therapist. I process things like a person who goes in and says, "This is a mirror. I'm giving you a chance to see yourself. Are you willing to open your eyes and look?" And then when you go, "Oh my God, I see myself," now go talk to your therapist about what you saw. Right? Like that if you know what your role is, right? And so part of that is for me is I don't actually have to know you.
Yes.
I don't have to know you a long time to affect change. I actually usually have a more powerful interaction with a person in my first 2 to 3 times than I do when I work with you for 3 years. Because I'm the type of person who pushes you so fast to like shift something that now you're almost like going to begin like a whole nother process because of the rapid thing that happened. And so I think that it's not just clarity about what it is that you see in others. Clarity has to start with you understanding who you are, what your superpowers are, what your gifts are. What do you actually bring to the table? I don't think most people know that.
No, I think that's an important call out. Like, I, there are tools that you can use to get to that, to find your superpower and find what you're really good at. And I think for me, whenever I took Strengths Finder, that was an eye opener for me because my
Mm,
top two are strategic and advancement. And
That's
that's
good.
why I named my company Strategic Advancement Corporate and Education Consulting, because that is my skill set. That is,
Mm.
I am very strategy based.
Hmm.
I will get to the root of what is happening, and then strategically we will build it up, we will fix it, and we will take those steps, and not all at once, but we will take those steps to get to where you want to go. How do we fix it? How do we fix the problem, and what are the steps that we need to take to get there? But you have to
Hmm.
be able, like you said, you have to be able to see that first. You have to know your strengths. Like for me to come in, my skill set is not your gift. You're right. You are intensely a motivational speaker. Like that is your gift. And people hear you speak and then they say, "Oh, I've got to go make these 20 changes right away. I'm not living my life right. I'm not doing this right. I'm not." And then I see people and I'm like, "Okay, let's fix it. Here's how we fix this. We're going to go step by step. I'm going to be with you through the long haul. I'm not going to leave you. I will be with you every step of the way." So I think that's the other thing too. People have to know that they're not alone going through that difficult change, and you never have to be. I think for me, I often in my leadership experience, I had amazing mentors. Like you
Mm.
mentioned in the intro, having an amazing mentor, it means everything in your journey
Why?
because it gives you clarity, and it's amazing. From my very first leadership role, I I was impressed by the person who was my mentor. He guided me every step of the way. And then as I continued through my career, I kept getting great mentors until I reached a position and I felt like that was the most lonely position that I'd ever had. I felt isolated. I felt like I was doing everything on my own, and I wanted a community or someone that I could go to that I could trust. And there was so much going on at that time that it was me going to my attorney because we had so many legal things going on that I had to clean up. There were so many things going on that I wasn't creating the issue, but I had to clean them up. And I'm like, I was alarmed because I'm like, I don't even know if anybody else on the planet has dealt with this. And it's really finding that person that will be confidential, that you can trust, that you can say, "This just happened and this is an oddity and I've never heard of anything like this before. Can you help me figure this out and get through it and not ruin our organization's reputation because someone made a mistake that's an employee, but I have to figure out how to fix this thing." And I think having those people that you can go to that will give you solid, clear advice and help you strategically unpack everything and make the best decision that you can with the situation that you're being handed. That that to me was having that was the biggest support system and just helped me take organizations to a different level. And it was
Mm.
invaluable in my career. And so when we talk about legacy of impact, that's what I want to be for other people. Like, are you struggling
Mm.
with something that you're like, I don't even know how to talk about this because I've never heard of this happening before, or it doesn't happen in my school, or it doesn't happen in my organization. How do I deal with this? I want to be that person that says, "Yep, let's get this figured out," and I'm with you every step of the way. That's true impact.
Hmm.
I'm going to sit with you until this is resolved.
I think that I heard you use the word clarity at least four more times, and I suppose that that is for any coach, any consultant. At least to me, clarity is more important than strategy because strategy is birthed out of clarity. That we can't really talk about how to fix a problem till we have identified what the problem is. Like, it's not possible. And I think that when I see a bad system or I see somebody who is trying to implement change who doesn't actually know how to implement change, they're telling you just do these steps without understanding where the person is, what the person has tried, what their hindrances, the roadblocks, the mental issue. Like, I have to always begin by understanding where are you? Who are you? As an organization, as an individual, I don't care what it is. Where are we at today? And I think that when we get clear about who we really are and where we really are and why we really are, by the way, the whys usually come later too. Usually the why comes during the process. But identifying who we are today and how we got here, like you can figure that out kind of quick if you're just willing to look at it. Mentors come into the situation, and because they have a different perspective, because they're not you and they're a step away or 2 steps away or 3 steps away, they often are able to add for you a layer of depth in your understanding of what's happening that I think is invaluable. I guess the question I would have for you today would be, as you're coming up with this legacy of impact, how do you know you're winning? Like what does winning look like in your life right now? What does victory look like for you?
That's a really good question. I think it's feedback because I just like I give feedback, I a win for me is a client that I've had for 10 years coming to me every year saying, "This is what we want to do next. Can you help us?" That's a win. Or having someone who really is not introspective become self aware and they say, "Oh, wow, I didn't even know that I was doing these things. I didn't even know that I was saying these things." I think that's the impact for me that I want to leave. Or getting students a building. That was huge for me. I mean, that was a lot of work. That was a lot of effort and it was a community effort, but that's the impact. The big things and the small things, like things that you think are not big, sometimes are often the biggest wins. And I think that's the impact that I want to leave and helping people and scale that to help people. I think that's the other thing, scaling this so I can help more people and doing it on just a whole different level.
So
So for
where would you
me, leaving that legacy and how will I know I won? It's getting that feedback. It's that positive feedback and
mm,
return clients saying, like, you helped me so much. I want to keep going. What can we do next? What's the next level? What do we do?
that's so good.
And that requires growth on my part. I don't have all
It
the
does.
answers. It's getting them to that next thing. What's next for you? Let's find it.
hmm I think for me, because of the role that I often play, I've had to learn how to be okay without the feedback. And what I mean by that is that sometimes, with the way that I've helped people, the times that I've helped people, where they're at in their journeys, sometimes I'm a seed planter in the role that I'm in, right? That I may not actually get to see you bear fruit with the role that I'm in sometimes. Um, that it may take a couple years for you to circle back around to me to say, Maurice, when we had these talks and had these conversations, this was such a catalyst for me, and I didn't have the words for it at the time, what it really did and what the impact was. And so there, I've had to learn. I think that's important to acknowledge because for some people who are in the world of helping, Paul in Scripture he says one person waters, plants the seed, another person waters it. Right? That you, if you are a seed planter, somebody else is watering the seed, and then the seed begins to sprout, and you may not get to see it. You may not get to enjoy it. Can you still believe you did the work you were meant to do? Can you still be proud of yourself that, hey, like I know I showed up and I gave everything I could give, even if I don't see the other side of it? And I think that
Mhm.
sometimes we can take that for granted when we don't get the phone call, hey, I want you to come back.
Mhm.
I think that sometimes then we can think we failed. Well, no, what if you didn't even fail in the person that didn't call? What if it's just that you won't get to experience the fruit, but the fruit is there?
I know I've done the big general sessions like you do a lot. You do those a lot. I do those, every now and again when my expertise is required. But for me, like nonverbals are huge there. That's my win. Like when I'm looking out into a huge audience, and I've given presentations with 900 before,
Mm,
and that's daunting. If you've never done that, your first one, you're like, oh, I don't even know. I can't read the room. It's hard to read the room. So for me, like I walk around a lot so that I can feel the energy. And I would
Mm.
imagine, I don't know if that's true for you, but the energy probably gives you the feedback that you see. Like
Oh,
that's the win for
100%.
you. You can feel the energy in that
Mm-hmm.
room.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking, you can know that you're making that impact. So that's how you know that you've made the impact for the day that you're looking for. You leave because you leave exhausted, right? Whenever you
Mm-hmm.
put everything out there, you leave exhausted. You go home and you're like, I'm all out of words. I got no more for today.
Mm-hmm.
But you, it just, it's fulfilling and knowing that you made that kind of an impact.
Yeah, and for me, yeah, it's 100% the energy of the room. And it's not the energy that people might think. It's not because people are enamored with me as a speaker or because people are excited about it is when I start to see the walls come down, when I see the people start to lean in. It is the honesty, openness, and transparency of the moment. I did a session the other day and I'm on a Zoom call. I hate Zoom like where you have like seven people in a boardroom and I've got 20 minutes to talk to these seven people and have an impact. Like that is like, and they're all like, I just did one the other day and they were like leaders of an airport, right? And so they're like, it's our Friday leaders meeting. Would you come speak? And so the honesty reality is, you know, that most of them, when they sat down, like their brain was on something completely different. They're also thinking about the meeting they have to have when I'm done and the answers that they have to be prepared to give and the questions that they need to ask. But I have to be able to get them to lean into those moments so that they can get something that they really desperately need, which is the whole reason that somebody said please come. And so I've learned that for me, the evidence that I'm where I'm supposed to be is the lean in. And I would say, you know, because even for me, short term versus long term, I have you know, clients that I've worked with for a year and for 2 years and for long periods of time. Hold on a second. Here's one of my long term clients. One of my one of my long term clients. What's up, buddy? Why are you crying? Are we okay? Some of you guys are listening to the podcast right now, so you don't get to see my cute son's face. Are you okay?
No, but my mom made me put rolling on my toys.
Okay. Well, listen, Daddy is doing an interview right now, so either you would have to sit super, super quiet on Daddy's lap and not talk, or you'll have to head back into the living room.
Okay.
Which one are you're gonna lay down? Are you tired? Okay. All right. Looks like it's nap time. So for me, there have been some clients that I've had who are long term and ongoing situations. I still look at myself as a short term answer even in those moments. And all that I mean by that is that, you know, I feel like a year is like my PowerPoint for the most part, right? Like I'm going to like help you have like a real long like push. And then at the end
Mhm.
of a year, we're going to be like, all right, how'd we do? Are you ready to run now? Are you running? Like, do you have all your momentum? And I kind of like clap as you keep running, right? It's like the jolt. It's the um I just think that it's a necessary part of the journey that you as an individual need to understand that we're all supposed to be a team and that you're supposed to be okay that a baton gets passed at some point in the journey. You just have to
Mhm.
know when it's your point and when it's not.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, when people lean in with that level of openness, I feel comfortable passing the baton to whoever takes them next. Whether I'm talking to you for 20 minutes or working with you for 20 sessions, I have to know you're open enough to hand the baton off and then grab the baton and keep running. And if you won't do that, then either we're not a pairing because you're not ready, or I have to keep holding on to you till you're actually ready to do that.
Yeah. I love that you said that because I think sometimes for me, when you talk about impact, I want to know I'm going to make that impact. And
Mm,
I don't want to take a client like when you just said, we may not be a good pair. I think that's really important, finding a good match, because you have to know that someone is open to hearing the hard things. Because if you're not open to hearing those hard things, then we're not going to grow apart and we're not going to grow together. Like, it's just not going to happen. You have to be ready for it. And I think that's making good choices about where you're going to invest your time and your energy, and helping people who really, really are ready to make that change. They're tired of their current situation. They don't know where else to go. They don't know what to do, but they know something needs to change, and they're
Yeah.
willing to fix it.
So good. Like, that's so good. I would even almost say you don't have to be completely willing to fix it with me. I don't know. Let me see if I can explain that better. We talked before this interview, and we said we were just going to like have a conversation on the mic and see how it goes, right? I think that for me, what I described with holding a microphone up to, excuse me, holding a mirror up to a person, I really mean that, right? And so, like, my favorite conversations to have with someone are to say, so why are we talking today? And I let them tell me kind of like the surfacey, this is what I prepared to say when I thought through the conversation. And usually after you've given it, I ask a question like, got it. So why are we really here? And
No,
why
it's
are
good.
we
Yeah,
really here, right? Like, that is,
yeah,
you are
yeah,
going to have to take a deep breath.
yeah.
You might say, I don't know what you mean. And I might go, well, something always causes us to get where we get. Why are we really here? When I ask questions like that, if a person says, like, gives me answers that, like, they show that they're not really trying to, like, figure it out in the moment, you just want to hide right now, I'm going to give you some more opportunities, but at some point, I'm going to know you're not really ready. The majority of times, what I find is that if a person has scheduled a call with me or is sitting down for a session with me, they're ready. They're just afraid. And so usually when a person doesn't really have a full answer to give, and I say, but tell me really why. Or if they say no, if I say no is, I don't know, is a starting point, it's not the end. And they take the deep breath and they go, well, I can just give you the best I got. That's all I need is the best you got. To me, if they have the courage to look in that moment, to explore in that moment, to examine in that moment, I don't need them to be ready to change yet. Because the beginning of our process
Mm-hmm.
together, you're not going to be changing. I don't need you to change today. The only change I needed was for you to be willing to open your eyes.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I
It
mean?
does make sense, but you know that, yes, but you know that they're ready for it by asking the right question. Like, it's really practicing the reverse strategy on them. Like,
Yes, yes.
I'm going to keep digging. I'm going to ask you, I know, 5 whys deep. Like, everybody's like, ask why, ask why. Let's get to the root of the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's fine. It's being able to have that skill set to dig deep into that and continue to ask them why. And then you'll figure out whether they're reflective or not, and
Yes,
whether
it's
they
so
will be
good.
a good fit, and whether they're ready to change or if they're closed off.
I think that one of the interesting things for me in the world that I live in is that some of the things that people use as tools that they've learned are my natural God-given superpowers, and some of the things that are very
Mm-hmm,
natural to
mm-hmm.
other people are the things I need systems for. So, like, I'm somewhat disorganized. Like, there's things that I'm not good at, and I like I need, what system you have. Oh, I've always been using this system. It's not a big deal. It's a big deal to me. Even to, like, asking questions, it's a very natural process for me. I can see people very well. Like, when I sit down with a person, I had two schools that I went to recently, and the two schools, when they gave me their quotes, it was almost the same quote. It was bizarre. And they basically said, Maurice has this way of seeing the students in front of him and understanding he's in front of as he's there. And then he addresses what he sees. Right? Now, that's really a prophetic gift, and it's from the Lord, right? And so when I'm asking questions, it's like I see what I see, and I'm taking you somewhere. They call that motivational interviewing in the therapy world, but I help you get yourself to where you need to go so you can see it clearly. But I'm not thinking of strategy. Like me personally, I'm not thinking, what does motivational interview saying is the next question to ask? I'm just like, when you say this, what does that word mean to you? And when you said that, why do you think that that's the case? Because like in my gut, I know there's something there. It's like I can feel it and sense it. And that's hard to put words in. And it's hard for me to help somebody else do, even though other people can help other people do it because it's in books. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 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 I think I like to get in the dirt with people, and I like to go with them where they are and talk about ways that we could get ourselves in a different pattern and some strategy.
What's your company called?
Strategic advancement.
Oh.
Transformational leadership is the competitive edge in a rapidly evolving, tech-driven landscape. But the question is, do you have the edge? Without strong leadership, teams struggle, communication breaks down, and opportunities slip away. At Strategic Advancement, we help leaders elevate their skills, empower their teams, and transform their organizations. Our expert coaching and consulting services provide the strategies you need to lead with clarity, confidence, and impact. Whether you're a business leader, an educator, or an executive looking to unlock potential, our tailored programs are designed to produce real, measurable results. Don't leave leadership to chance. Gain the edge. Visit strategicadvancement.com for more information.
That's what leaders, they need to be able to actively listen. And I think sometimes that's an overlooked superpower. Active listening is so important because you're listening for things that people are saying, and you want to find out what's behind those.
I would almost say
that's
beyond active listening is active viewing, active looking. I think that is actually the superpower. That people, when you're working with them, they tell you a whole lot with nonverbals. They tell you a whole lot with actions and interactions that have nothing to do with words. And actually, for me, that's actually my superpower. That I'm watching you when you don't realize I'm watching you. So as an example, you're in a room full of people, and a person raises their hand and asks a question, and you answer their question with a question and push them a little bit and get them to start working through their own answer, right? That's the type of thing we do as clinicians. If you look around the room, somebody in the room got tense. And the reason that person got tense is because they're a mama bear in the room. They always want to make sure that everybody else in the room is safe. And they are alert because you pushed back against that person. And they want to make sure that person is safe, and they don't know you yet, so they don't know if they can trust you. So I know that you're the protector person in the room, right? Somebody else answers a question, and when the answer is coming, they take a deep breath. They took the deep breath either because the answer that the person is getting, this is your situation too, and this is something that you really need to lean into, so I'm going to have to ask you the next question because like this is hitting home. Or you're taking the deep breath because, well, I'm glad that person got their answer, but I still don't know mine, and I feel lost. Like, people will tell you things if you're really watching how they breathe, how they move, how they lean in, how they lean back. So much happens with nonverbals. And so when I'm speaking, I'm just watching people. I'm watching their eyes. I'm watching them tinker with their fingers. I'm watching everything they do, and I'm learning who they are. And so the answers that they give me, most people are so well spoken that they can give you a polished answer from an unpolished place. And you can tell that it's unpolished if you're really paying attention to what they're not saying and to what they're giving off that their words are not saying. That's what I think I pay attention to. I don't even know if that makes any sense. but it's
Yeah,
like
no,
the watching
100%.
part.
It reminded me, yeah, whenever you're telling that, it reminded me of how much I really disliked presenting during COVID. When everybody had masks on, you could not, it was really, the only
Yes.
thing you could see was here. And it was so difficult to read the room because like you, like when you're presenting, you are paying attention to those nonverbals so that you know what to say next. Or yeah, they're really digging this, so we're good. Or they're hurting, like there's fear here, so we need to go deeper into this. So we
Hmm.
really do, and it's not just you're right. It's not just active listening. It's taking that a step higher. And I
Yes.
think leaders need to figure out how to read the room. And I think sometimes that's what gets a lot of people in trouble, like what we talked about before. There's no clarity, there's no self-awareness on how you are perceived by others in the room when you're leading.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that's a big thing to get to the root of, because that's a barrier that people don't even know that they have
Hmm.
sometimes, because they can't see it themselves. They need someone to be clear and kind to tell them, hey, this is a barrier that I'm seeing when I watch you interact with your staff. And it's something that you can work on. There's nothing really that you can't work on in some way. There's
I
nothing that you
completely
can't get
agree.
better at.
I agree, and it takes a willingness, and I don't want anybody who's listening today to think that I'm not saying that I use strategies, because I do use strategies, right? I do have methods, I do have techniques, not only ones that I've created, but also ones that I've just learned from my experience and my training. I think that what I'm kind of saying is that I agree. I think that anyone can get better, that anyone can learn, that anyone can mature, right? And I think that it all begins with the word honesty. Clarity is birthed out of honesty. And so I think that that is the part of it that is the however you get there is however you need to get there, but you need to get there. That if you're trying to figure out why your business isn't functioning the right way, you're going to have to get honest. If you're trying to figure out why your marriage is broken, you're going to have to get honest. If you're trying to figure out why you don't feel confident in yourself, you're going to have to get honest about what's hurt you, what's harmed you, what scarred you, what's wounded you, what's broken your heart. You're going to have to get honest. And there's layers to honesty. There's depth to honesty. It takes time to get that open.
Yeah.
But if we're unwilling to do that, we'll never be able to get to the point. I don't care what the strategy is, right? And that's why there's even a strategy for how to look and how to examine and how to
Mm-hmm.
assess, and I think that people have to be willing
Mm-hmm.
to take. It's like they could go to me or you, or they could go to a million other people who could be effective. But if you don't go through a process with anyone all the way in, you won't get better with anyone. It doesn't really matter what the person's teaching. It matters if you are being clear and honest and real about the real situation in your life. And I think that that's so critical.
Yeah. Yes. In one of the things I teach, and it's really about teacher leadership, and it really gets teacher voices. I will ask leaders not to add input into the conversation. And it's really interesting whenever I go to different schools to see how that impacts the conversation. And when you take the leader's voice out and you open up that voice to those that they lead and put them in charge of creating the action plan, it takes the moment for leaders out of that isolated decision making process, and it opens up this opportunity for teachers voices or employees voices to be heard, and not just give comments, but it's, where do you think we should go, where what are you seeing is the root of our problem and our problem of practice. No matter what organization it is, we all have a problem of practice. I have a problem of practice. You have a problem of practice within your organization. We all have one. We have things that we
Mm-hmm.
need to fix. And I know you and I have talked a lot about marketing. And for me, that was my problem of practice in the last year. that was something I needed to hone my skills in, because it's not something that I ever learned until I became an entrepreneur. And so really opening up the opportunity to hear other voices, to make your organization better, to make you better as a leader, and being open to that transformation process. Like, I have to hear this if I'm not sending the right message. And it could be anything, something you say in training, it could be something you're delivering online or a social media post. What is your message that you're sending? And is it clear? And what voices are you listening to whenever you're creating that path to that decision that you're making, if that makes any sense? It's really,
It does.
making a way to hear different voices that only makes your team get better,
Yes, it does.
rather than them making decisions in isolation, which holds you back.
Someone that I spoke to recently said something, and I thought it was so true. They said bosses build followers, leaders build leaders. Right? That the measure of a true leader is that they teach other people how to be leaders. Not necessarily to become them as a leader, but leaders equip other leaders to lead, right? And some of the environments that both you and I have found ourselves in an effort to help and change and facilitate change, there's a lot of situations where fear is the driving force. People are afraid to mess up, afraid to get it wrong, afraid to screw up. Well, that doesn't build a leader. It might get you doing some of the right things, but what it's cultivating is not leadership. It cultivates just becoming a machine. And at the end, the difference between being a machine is the heart. Go ahead.
That's interesting that you say that. I had a manager myself that thought that it was better to tear people down than build them up. Like, you're going to get more work out of people if you completely, like, just tell them they're not doing what you want them to do, or nobody's going to like this, or I had that myself. And I see posts on LinkedIn a lot about people starting conversations about cultures of organizations and being in toxic cultures. It starts with the leader.
Yes.
That sets the tone for the organization. And I think that should be the impetus for change. But oftentimes leaders who are cultivating that toxic culture sometimes don't have awareness to know that they're cultivating that culture until someone tells them. And I think oftentimes employees sometimes feel powerless in changing that, and they'll stay in that toxic environment rather than saying, this is not something I'm open to tolerating for various reasons, or I don't have the ability to go get a job because of where I live. It's not something that I can just go job shop and find something right away if I don't like the culture of the organization. And so I'm reading a lot about that on LinkedIn and thinking, my goodness, I've really been in a position where whenever I was going through that, I went to someone and I said, I can't work like this. Like, this is not the type of leader that I want to work for. This is not going to work for me. It's not going to work for me and your organization. So I'm open to any suggestions that you may have. And the process that we went through to get to where we got to was not easy. It wasn't overnight, but sometimes people don't feel like they can have that voice, and having that voice and that opportunity to speak up is so important. And I wouldn't want to run an organization if I weren't giving people that voice. And so I think what I've learned through the years, I've been fortunate in that I could say, because of I think my path and the path that I'd taken, because I went from being a leader to being a leader in a different capacity within an organization. So I could say, this isn't working for me. I can't work under this leadership. I will not be berated. I will not be told that I'm not going to make an impact. I'm open to feedback, but I would like specific feedback, like the content in the slide did not work because of this, or what you said it confused people, or what you said was not really the message that we were going for. It didn't meet organizational goals. I can handle all that feedback, but I don't want to work for somebody who is going to micromanage every single move I'm making. Out there that are dealing with that in the workplace. And I know that that's uncomfortable. And so I think, reflecting on what you just said, I've been really fortunate in that I was able to say, and in an organization that supported me in that, and they changed my leadership, and it made my whole, once they did that, it made my whole department thrive. We created a leadership series for all of our managers across the organization, and really taught them about the things that you and I have been talking this whole entire hour. What does self-reflection mean? What does it mean to live the company core values? And are the company core values aligned with your own? And really digging deep into that to look at, how do we advance this organization? Are we all moving in the right direction? And how, if not, how do we need to get there? And so I think hearing you say that, it's really important to be an organization. And if you're not that organization, get help, because there are people like you, like me, and there are a lot of people out there that can help you with that. If you know that your organization is not open to hearing how to best encourage, motivate, and advance your employees, how to build capacity within the team that you have, you're missing the mark, because it could be so much greater than what it is.
Yes. I often think, like when I sit down with an organization, one of the first things I do is ask for their mission statement and their values. And if I'm going to sit down and talk to you as a leader, like let's say, I have the opportunity to work with you, the CEO, you, the whatever, the COO, whatever it might be, I want to have a conversation about what you say that the organization believes in, because I want to find out if like you are actually in alignment with it. Sometimes we're not in alignment with what we say we stand for, because like we've just shifted in our beliefs and we need to update the vision. And sometimes we've gone off course chasing survival or chasing what looks like thriving, and we forgot about the pillars of why we started. And I think that that's always very, very important, is bringing those types of things up. I also think that when you talked a little bit about sitting down with the leader, the worst meeting that you could ever have is the meeting where the boss brings you in and they fold their arms and they look at everybody like, this is what you all need. And so that is probably going to be an unworkable and unwinnable situation if you actually believe that everybody else is the broken ones and you're the one who's got it together. And so anytime that I have a chance to speak to that early in a process, I want to.
Amen.
Because at the end of the day, if you're unwilling to change, why would you think that your employees can change? But if you're willing to go through a process, to try new things, to take a risk, whatever it might be, right? Then what you're doing is empowering other people to do the same thing, because if he would do it, if she would do it, I guess I need to do it too. That's real leadership. Real leadership says, look, everybody's got some skeletons in the closet. Let's open up all the closets. And I think that authentic leadership, that is really almost all of my clients, even when I have one-on-one clients, are leaders. And I think that the reason for that is that there are people who have felt so responsible to help everyone else succeed that they never really learned a healthy way to succeed themselves. They were told your job is to make sure that this team of people wins. Whatever it takes, they need to win. Kick their butt, cuss them out, push them, pull them, whatever it takes, make sure they win. That's how you win.
Yeah.
But it's actually not how you win. How you win is getting healthy. How you win is assessing success for yourself and figuring out what success looks like. How you win is continuing to develop as an individual so that you are a more well fine-tuned and refined and reformed version of you year after year after year. so that maybe when you started, you pushed everybody. Then after a while, you pulled everybody. But at some point, as a leader, you're supposed to be the voice saying, hey, we can do this. I'm walking beside you. Let me know what you need to help, but I'm right here. Sometimes you don't need to pull or push. You need to create systems and processes and procedures, and then you need to walk beside
Yep.
people. That's leadership.
Yep. Yeah.
Healthy
And
leadership.
opening that door. Yes. And opening that door. The thing that I've found also is people in an organization can be dealing with something that a leader did 20 years ago, and they're carrying that into the current leadership.
Yes.
And they're blaming that current leader for the same problem that they didn't cause. And the leader doesn't even know that they're stepping on that landmine. They're like, I don't know what is making people so angry. Can you come in and figure out what's causing this issue? And it can be trauma from 20 years ago. And when it's that case, it's a matter of listening to people and letting them know you're not that type of leader. You're not, that's not who you are. That's not what the company values. And that's not who you want to be, so that they can begin to heal from the past so that you can work towards a strategy for the future. And that's so important, because leaders may be dealing with something that wasn't even something that they caused. It's trauma from 15, 20 years ago that still exists because that person who's an employee experienced it, and they're holding on to it. They're packing that baggage with them on every trip they go on.
We could go down an entire rabbit hole, which we're not going to right now, on how I know I talk a lot about wounds and scars and trauma and drama and pain. And I almost think that people think that like that is only something for super broken people and super broken organizations. But everybody has had trauma, and everybody has had heartbreak and disappointment, and it has affected you either organizationally or individually, whether you realize it or not. And no, not every conversation we have as an organization has to dwell on the past, but there are some times and some seasons where we have to address and heal from what it is that has caused wounds, so at least wounds can become scars, right? Where at least we can stop bleeding in an area. And yes, we'll know that something has happened because the wound is there, but we can't, because the scar is there, but we can't stay wounded. So let's say somebody has enjoyed this conversation today. They have really loved just listening to your mind, your insight, your perspective. How can a person find you? How can somebody work with you? You talked about your assessments. How can a person get to your assessments if they want to take one of those?
That's a good question. The easiest way is to go to the website, and that's at strategicadvancement.com. And we do coaching, consulting for both education and corporate. And coaching, I think one of my biggest projects this year is creating a scalable coaching model so that everybody has affordable access to coaching. And if you go to my coaching page, there's a main coaching page. It'll give you all the resources, but I will say there's free resources, and that quick self-assessment is something that is free. Everybody can take it, and you get a follow-up call with me directly, and we'll talk about and unpack some of the issues that you might be having in your leadership. And there's free resources, whether you're overwhelmed or you're stressed or you're struggling, how to overcome those. And in my coaching program, it's an interactive, it's all live calls, and it's resources that leaders can bring their problems to. We do monthly professional development. It's a 1-hour virtual call, and we talk about something that will unstick your mind. So it's a mindset shift. And on March 4th, I'm getting ready to do in that group, I'm getting ready to do one on the Wheel of Life, and it's my version on the Wheel of Life. So it's different from what you may have seen before. And it's really talking about how do you find that balance as a leader. And we'd love for you to come and engage in that community and get to know the community for a limited time. Right now, I'm offering that tool if you join the Leadership Hub, which is our community. But the free resources that we have available is called the Reflective Leader. So if you join the Reflective Leader, you'll automatically get an opportunity to join us on March 4th. And the details are all at my website. And if nothing else, I would love for you to set up a call with me. I would love to talk to anyone and just encourage you on this journey and help you with whatever you're struggling with. I want to turn that pain point or that roadblock into a real result for you too.
So you said your hope, which leads us to the question that is always the question that we end with here on Hope Rising. I want you to imagine that it is 100 years from now. And there is a museum, a place where there is curated content about this day and age. And there's somebody who is in need of a pick-me-up, in need of a boost. They're a leader. They're somebody who they're trying to build their vision and trying to build their life's work 100 years from now, but it's just not happening for them. And they walk into a room marked hope, and inside of that room there's all kinds of artifacts, and there's a time capsule, multiple, and one of those time capsules has the name Kristi Thompson on it. They look inside and there's books in there, and there's just different worksheets and just things that have been accumulated from your story, from your legacy. And then there's this clip. And this clip explains to somebody who's in need of some hope right now what hope means to you. What do you say that hope is?
I think hope is that thing that you grasp onto when you're in that period of waiting. Like, I'm waiting for this to get better, or I'm hopeful that my organization can change. I'm exhausted. I'm broken. It's that moment where you figure out that a breakdown has to come before the breakthrough. And I think hope is that thing that motivates us to get to where we want to go, because without it there wouldn't be growth. We wouldn't put the effort into growing, and we wouldn't see the fruits of our labor without hope.
Hope is the breakdown that is required that leads to the breakthrough. I love it. If you are listening or watching today and you have found yourself at the midst of breakdown, perhaps you're exactly where you need to be. And so we hope that we'll find you here next week on another episode of Hope Rising, where the unfulfilled go for fulfillment, and where those who inspire go for another dose of inspiration. We'll talk to you soon.